Hey YouTube, how's it going? Appreciate you clicking on the video. Have you ever wondered where to invest your money? Like, how do you know whether a $5 stock or a $100 stock is the better investment? Well, guess what? There's this thing out there called fundamental analysis. Now, my understanding of fundamental analysis might be a little bit different than other people, but I like to kind of split it into two different categories. There's qualitative and quantitative analysis when it comes to looking at stocks. And one of them, the quantitative, is going to be more or less something that's dealing with numbers, hardcore numbers, looking at different, reports, earnings, profit, blah, 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 blah. And then there's qualitative, which is more or less like the sentiment of the company or how that brand or company does business, the leadership, that sort of stuff. Anyway, in this video, I'm going to go over qualitative analysis. So I hope you got everything from the thumbnail and the title, because obviously I'm not doing my job if you didn't know that we're talking about qualitative analysis in this video. First off, I want to take a step back and just say, when you're going to invest your money, I would say that most people would want to just look at an overall market index and just ride the entire market. Looking at something like the SPY, which is over the S&P 500, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, if you really like industry. Which doesn't seem to be like the main growth factor, I guess, of the current age. But anyway, like I said, you can take different sectors and try and do this ETF or that ETF, but doing a market-wide index is usually a pretty good bet to just let your money grow in a more safe direction. Now, if you want to be a little bit more advanced and try and go single stock, that's what this video is trying to, purport or give you something. By no means do I think that this should happen or people should take this advice. It's just, if you really want to take your time to really find out about a company or try to actually follow a certain brand, something that maybe you invest in, that sort of stuff, then maybe you would want to do this. The biggest takeaway from right now is that you do not want to do this. Like, don't do single stocks, because it's just, don't. This video is not investing advice. Do not do this. Okay, now how to do this responsibly. Okay, so with this video, we're going to be looking at qualitative analysis. I know I already said that, but just stick with me. So first off, you know that the stock market houses almost every single company that's on this green earth, or at least it's, American made, that sort of thing, unless they're like super small or, private businesses. Like, you can't invest in Next anymore because it's private. But anyway, long story short, you're going to want to try and pare down to something that is reasonable to your endeavor, right? Like something that you're interested in, something that you maybe purchase or utilize all the time. Maybe it's something that you use at work. Maybe it's something that you use at home. I don't know what that is. But just think about things about where you spend your money, what you like to do. Maybe you like a certain brand of clothing, like, I don't know, Under Armour, Nike, Adidas, Lululemon, or I don't even know other brands. I don't go shopping there anyway. Or maybe it's something along the lines of dealing with computers, right? Like technology based, Nvidia, right? You buy a graphics card, or Asus or Sony, or I don't know, Panasonic if you do cameras and that sort of stuff. Anyway, find out things that interest you, things that you might purchase or actually utilize, because those companies are going to be something that you actually know, right? You're going to know a little bit more about the business, about things that they make, about how they conduct, like whether they're just product based or service based. Like maybe you want to do Microsoft, right? And people are signing up for their OneDrive, the 365 stuff or whatever, and they have this recurring charge that happens every year. Any of that sort of stuff, that you know how profits are being generated and you understand more about the company, because when something bad happens, like the stock dips a little bit, you can understand whether or not that company is actually losing market share and that's why it's dipping, and this is going to be a long drawn out, hey, it's going to keep down for a while, or it's something that's just a blip where it's like, hey, we had a Microsoft security issue that happened to be a third party, but it's like, Microsoft computers couldn't be used for a while, that sort of stuff. So being in the know of the business and being actually invested in how that company does business usually helps you in determining a positive approach, or a more, informed decision-making process when it comes to buying or selling that stock. Okay, so the next little determinant factor that I think would be, possibly pretty big for you to actually understand is the growth potential of that company. Are they very established and throwing out dividends all the time? Those are usually pretty decent, but your money is not going to actually grow, right? I'm going to put in $5 and the $5 might pay me 1 cent every 3 months or something like that. Just due to the fact that $5 usually isn't going to give you very much if you've only invested $5 in a company. You know, like the earned price per share is pretty small, and buying $5 for maybe 1 share isn't going to get you very much. But anyway, I digress. But if you're wanting your money to actually grow, you're wanting to find something that has like a new edge on a certain industry, or something that has like a wave path forward, right? Like we're growing in size, we're growing in business, we're developing new products, and we're coming out with new things that are going to get people excited. People are going to buy their products more, their services, and then the company will grow. Therefore, your money will grow. Another tidbit of that growth potential is more or less how their marketing goes, right? So when you hear things like "eat fresh" or "I'm loving it" or I don't know, "have it your way," you know, these different little catchphrases of marketing that kind of establish pieces of the market and kind of understand what you're thinking. You know, "just do it." That just popped into my head. Anyway, those different pieces, those different marketing brands are kind of synonymous with a certain standard of living per se. And so sometimes when you have certain products or a certain company that's equating to some sort of, you know, level of societal standard, I guess, these can kind of be deterministic on whether or not somebody, you know, how much the business would prosper or do well. Because those gimmicky type things make people think about those things. And if those people are thinking about those things, then they might actually go buy and purchase those things. Like, how is anybody ever going to buy anything if they don't know it exists, right? Like, your marketing's got to be at least somewhere. So off of those people thinking about those things and you know, talking about those things, what is the feedback that you're getting from those people, right? Is there good talk? Are there good things? I mean, let's take a look at Chipotle. I'm gonna bring up Chipotle later in this video too. But anyway, Chipotle has seriously gone through a reprimand in the last couple of months about size, portion, and how, you know, stingy they're being with their product instead of just giving out the food. I mean, it's rice and beans, you know, you can't even get a full bowl of rice and beans. People aren't going to buy it, right? It's exorbitantly high priced and you're not getting very much for it. Shrinkflation, whatever you want to call it. It's just not gonna, you're hurting your business, right? And so that would cause it to most likely go down in value. But there's been a CEO switch recently and some other stuff. But anywho, let's move on. Just like think about how that customer feedback and how that brand or that service is kind of perpetuated amongst the masses. Okay, so now that you're looking through all those different pieces, I also want you to take a moment and look at the leadership of said company, right? You want to try and find something that has a stable leadership, people who are invested in the company and have an incentive to really have the company do well, right? So number one, you want to make sure that employees are satisfied with their leadership. If people are unhappy with where they are working, that usually means low productivity, and that low productivity will cause problems within products, and those products having problems will cause customer sentiment to be bad, and the whole cycle just circles the drain eventually, right? So good leadership that is approved of by the actual people, and then that leadership actually being invested. Now, number one, you can look up good leadership or the leadership approval ratings on like a glassdoor.com, right? So you have Glassdoor, in which you can go search for a company. That company's, you know, different pieces of the actual interview process and stuff for having a career at that company will come up. But you should be able to see statistics of how the actual company staff and the current employee situation is reflected, and whether people are liking their job or not liking their job. Then on the other side of trying to figure out whether people are invested, you can go to something like Yahoo Finance and scroll down to find where the insiders are invested. There should be a percentage that comes about that says, you know, hey, the insiders own this much of the company, right? And so the higher those numbers are, as far as the approval rating being higher than say 80% or something like that, people are happy with their situation. And the investment, the insider's investment number being a higher percentage, just meaning that the people at the company are going to have an incentive to try and do better, right? There's a driving force that if I'm invested in the company, then I want the company to do well, because then I reap more rewards. So those different things, easy to spot, but make sure you're looking at the leadership and how well they are producing, whether there's been any instability, right? If a CEO is leaving, if a CEO has bad press, any of those sort of things can be a bad look on the company. And so if you find something that has like a CEO on the way out or just left, the company might be at a lower price, in which there might be opportunity for a buying opportunity. But if a CEO has been doing good, then a company might be on the way up just because of productivity being higher and the insiders having a vested interest in actually making the company do good. Okay, so now that we've looked at leadership, I also want you to take a look, which is probably my last tidbit of the day, but I want you to take a look at how it stacks up against competitors. Indeterminately looking at the competitive advantages of your business, right? So does this business, set the actual prices, right? When Coca-Cola raises its cent, or it raises its product a couple of cents, people are still going to buy it, right? They can set the market value price because, they make so much, they're probably not that great of an example. If you think about streaming services, if they decide to raise their price up a little bit, are people going to stick around or are they not going to stick around? Take this into effect. If they set their own prices, if they can dictate how the market is consuming their product, then it might be a very good investment because they have a lot of dominance inside of the market. Look at how easy it is to switch from competitor to competitor. If we go back to the streaming services type thing, you can cancel your card at Netflix and move it over into Disney Plus, just the flip of a switch, right? You take a couple minutes, you cancel the account on one and you start the account on the other. That competitor switch can be a pretty lofty piece on how much profit can come in. Because if you think of something like a bank, right? If you're trying to switch from like Chase to Bank of America or something like that, you have to go through changing cards. And you have to make sure that your direct deposit at work is changed, right? There's like all these barriers in the way of like, is it really what I want to do? Do I really want to close that account and open up another account and do all of this overhead that has to happen in order for that to be effective? Just something to think about of how easy it is to switch between competitors. And the next portion would probably be the brand's power, right? And what do I mean by that? I pretty much am talking about the public brainwashing that happens. And the reason I bring that up is because I think of Apple. I am against Apple. I'm an Android user. I know, just rake me over the coals in the comments. I don't care. But Apple has this idea that they're synonymous with superiority, with better. It kind of goes along with like maybe Stanley Cups. I know at one point it was Yeti. Now it's a Stanley Cup. And like, like there's different little tidbits out there where it's like, oh, I have this. I'm going to be way out of my league here, but like Gucci or Versace or I don't know, whatever. I hear words. I don't know them. I don't care. Dallas Cowboy t-shirts. You know what I'm saying? That's what I want. There's a football and then a Dallas. That's all I care about. Anyway, long story short, what's the brand's power, right? Are people making this thing into something that it really isn't, to where you're driving price based on keeping up with the Joneses? So that pretty much sums up qualitative analysis. It's just like 6 different things. It's not a perfect science. It's more or less your sentiments or your thoughts on the company, and you taking an honest look at the world around you and understanding how well that company is actually in the marketplace. Just remember that when it comes to making the decisions on where to invest your money, you probably want to do something that you're buying or purchasing because you'll actually know the product and actually know the business and how well the quality of those things are, which then lets you know about the industry, right? Because you've probably had to decipher on whether or not you wanted a product X or product Y, right? And you're having to make that decision, so you know a little bit about the industry, about things that need to know, as far as decision making that other customers are going to do. You probably have researched something along the lines of how those customers are taking the products and whether they like them, whether they don't like them, which then brings you into a growth potential, right? So if you've found something that isn't necessarily wide ranged or very big, but there's an opportunity to buy into the company, you can have that money grow alongside the growth of the company. So if they're going to grow, then your money will grow along with them. There's a growth potential, which is pretty nice, unless you're doing something like a dividend investing where you're wanting something that's established that will just pay you out regularly. Those usually take a while to kind of get rolling. If you get a large sum of money and then put it into dividend investing, then there's possibility where it will steadily grow. But just getting that snowball effect is kind of hard at the beginning. Anyway, long story short, number 4, you want to make sure they have an established product or service, right? You want to make sure that these things are sticking around. There's actually something they can put their name on, backing toward that company and that they're going through. And that just leads into number 5 of the company's leadership. You want to make sure that that leadership is well established and positive, brings a positive work environment to their employees by their approval rating and their CEO. And then on the flip side, you want to make sure that those leaderships are actually being invested in the company and keeping their investments there so that there's an incentive to actually be productive within the day of work. And then the 6th and final piece is the competitive advantages that go alongside of the company. So this is like setting the price and making sure that the public interest is there, and how well they stack up to their competitors, and whether or not it would be easy to switch to a competitor. All those different pieces should be playing a factor into your decision-making product or your process. And just try to make sure that you're picking something that has good growth potential, but then at the same time also gives you the ability to have a established and well-formed company that is doing well. If you decide to put your money in something that isn't quite as established, these have great potentials to rise in value and give you a lot of bang for your buck. But at the flip side, it also has great risk in the sense that it could actually taper off and go really down because they're not established and haven't produced a product that the public really wants. So there's the video. I do appreciate you sticking around to this part. If you found it helpful in any way, think about helping a fella out and give me a like. Maybe hit the sub button for me. I'd appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful day. I will be doing another video on quantitative where we actually take a look at numbers, which will be a little more indicative of how well a company is performing than necessarily just thinking about your kind of thoughts and feelings or your perception of how a company is doing. But with that, I'm going to get out of here. I do appreciate it. Enjoy your day. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.